About a year ago, I received a call from a friend who said, "Are you aware of how many homeless vets are living in Florida?" And I said, "No." He said, "Why don't you go up to the area around Cape Canaveral and see if you can interview them?" So I went up there, and in a little suburban development, there was about a 2-acre wooded area. And what I found was that there were hundreds and hundreds of vets living in this area. It's very dense in foliage. People were in little tiny pup tents. And what surprised me was that there was no water, there was no electricity, no sanitation, no food, no stores, no place to get anything, and yet they were surviving. I was told there's a place in New Jersey, not far from New York, an hour and a half away, that's not too dissimilar than what you were discussing about the plight of the homeless vets in Florida. So we just arrived. We're only 100 yards off the main road, a very affluent area here. And here we see what is clearly an encampment of people who are trying to survive. We're going to talk with them in a moment, and we're going to go into some of these homes. There's a tent there that's up on logs. You have, I passed a teepee, a lean-to, and I'm told that there are over 60 families that live here. This is not legal, and I don't see electricity or septic systems, so I'm going to ask them the same questions. How do you get through a day? And why is it they have no advocates? We're in the state of New Jersey. Why isn't this an issue? Homelessness in New Jersey. Now, what's interesting is, just briefly, I spoke with some individuals who were college graduates, including professionals who had earned 6 figures a year and now living in a homeless camp. They're doing the best they can. And I'm told, and now we're going to get the details, that the county doesn't want them here, the city doesn't want them here, their neighbors don't want them here, the state doesn't want them here. All right. Well, what's the state doing to stop the foreclosures and to help them? These are questions that I believe should be answered. We're living a very high standard of life, and now it's collapsing. Not only has it collapsed for the 5 million who've lost their homes, it is collapsing for another 6.8 million people in the next few years whose mortgages are underwater, and a total of about 11 total million over the next 6 years. So let's just project ahead. Within the next 6 years, we could have over 50 million homeless Americans. And not a single thing can I find the Republicans or Democrats are doing to stop home foreclosures, to help the people instead of the banks, to put them out of their houses, to feed the 17 million hungry children, to provide living wages instead of McDonald's wages. Let's explore this in depth.
I've been working with the homeless for 11 years. For the first 5 years, I worked with a high voltage electrical contractor doing a lot of government work, then Port Authority work. I've worked in the Holland, Lincoln Tunnel, and all the bridges, Port Authority bridges and airports. And at the same time, I was coming home and helping out the homeless. It was about 6 years ago, or about 5 years ago now, that I realized I couldn't do both. I couldn't do the secular job working in the city and come home and adequately supply the homeless. So I quit the job working for the high voltage electrical contractor and concentrated on just helping out the homeless of Ocean County who they don't have access to any type of shelter.
Why not?
There's nothing.
There's no shelter?
There's no shelter in Ocean County.
In the whole county?
In the whole county.
How many people live in Ocean County?
Oh, it's at least 500,000. Yeah.
And 500,000 in New Jersey, in a rather affluent area, you don't have a single shelter?
Not a single shelter.
That's insane. Yeah. Now, I understand the county and the state and others don't want you here.
Right. You know, to this point, they've been trying to push out the homeless, sweep us under the rug, and just try to ignore the problem. But, you know, of course, with the economic situation the way it is, more people are falling through the cracks. More people are having no other options but tent city. So the tent cities are growing. The politicians can't help but take notice, and they realize that the general public is starting to notice that there's homeless people living in the woods of their county. So they're starting to realize that they can't ignore the problem anymore. There's 15 platforms right now in the camp, and it was the township of Lakewood that forced us to demolish.
Why?
15. We signed a consent order last July that we wouldn't expand the camp. Come late fall, I realized we didn't have enough structures to house the wood stoves to keep the people warm during the wintertime, so we had to break the consent order and build the structures to keep the people warm. We built them, we survived the winter, nobody got sick, nobody got frostbite or pneumonia. But just a couple of weeks ago, the township said tear down the structures. And but we're looking at another winter around the bend, and it's going to be life-threatening. To this point, the state has never come down into this camp saying, what can we do to help?
So the state doesn't help you, the county wants you out, the local township wants you out. What about the neighbors?
We have no problem with the local neighbors, never had a problem with the local neighbors being affected by this camp in any way. And so I think they're supportive. Some of the buildings in the area are projects, are poor people themselves, and they can understand how people can end up here.
We've had a lot of rain in the last few days, so there are mosquitoes everywhere. And you see plastic, which protects them from the rain and offers some insulation from the cold. And you see this like a little trailer here with mosquito netting. And you see 55-gallon drums around that are burning wood. And I'm assuming that that represents some form of cooking for them.
We came from New York City, from Queens. Jamaica Estates. We lived in an apartment there for 11 years. How we got here? I'm sure you know there's a lot of bad business practice in this country. My wife was a top textile designer in New York. For example, Robert Allen Company, which existed for 30 years, she had 4 of the top 10 selling designs. Her designs were in Target and Lowe's and Kmart, $1 million designs, and her boss paid her less than pennies on the dollar. Not only did he pay her less than pennies on the dollar, he and his cronies would sit around and schmooze and chew the fat and do nothing, and they were jealous of her productivity and creativity, so he wound up firing her. We had a totally full-time schedule. I've been writing a book on veganism, as I said, doing radio work with BAI. When my wife lost her job, we had no place to turn. We lived with our daughter's family for a while, and we had a falling out. My wife was speaking to a friend who said the very same thing, that there were many homeless encampments around. She said, why don't you try that? My wife went on the internet, and the very first one that came up was this one, Minister Steve. She called him, said, told him about our situation. We would want to come out. Said we had birds and everything, and he said, fine. And a month later, we came here to live. One thing about this camp, there's a lot of donations here, which is great, for people in need. So with all the support that people get out here, people are very cooperative. They're understanding that in order for us to live in anywhat of a healthful way, we can't be unsanitary. We have to respect each other and respect ourselves, so we keep pretty clean.
With places like this, and people like Minister Steve and Hannah, and you can make it. It's a little rough, but as long as you get your basic needs met, it's not easy, but it can be done.
We're walking through the woods here. I've seen some poison oak. I saw some poison ivy. Lots of spiders. Another encampment over there. mosquitoes everywhere. And they had these nice platform houses where they were up, and they had wooden walls, and it was comfortable for them, but the town made them tear them all down. There's a portisan over there. That's one toilet. I wonder what would happen if the average American tried to, just thought about going through a day where there's no toilet, no shower, no stove, no refrigerator, no running water.